a sheer delight, as always, to be a part of what is done here each and every year. The dedicated people with near, all the great people. I mean, look around, there's people who have been saying all day, and you bump into people you haven't seen in a long while. I mean, you know, Billy Wimble, you look at him, he's a gentleman. He's around, there's red in that red tie, Billy. I'd like to look like that at your age, I'm telling you. And Ernie Gahan, and so many people, Bill Slater, and even Eddie West. Eddie West dressed up for this thing. It's pretty good. Congratulations all. And it is especially a proud moment to be up here with today with the class of '08, including Dick Batchelder, Dick Berggren, and of course the late Howard Brown. The 3 Bs of the New England Supermodified Racing Association, and finally history has changed that, because for many, many years, if there were 3 Bs associated with NESMRA, the reputation was Budweiser, booze, and broads. However, Howard Brown wasn't into any of that. Howard Brown was a true champion, a very competitive guy. He was the John Wayne character. Not as tall, but every bit leather neck tough. Guts, grit, bow-legged walk. He was tough, all right. And when it came to underdogs, he became more of a race driver than most. Howard Brown, often overshadowed by Flash, Dash, and Cash, went on to a career that was very special. A former Golden Gloves boxer, he started racing jalopies in 1949 at the old Newmarket, New Hampshire Speedway. And he went on to race throughout New England, New York, Florida, Canada, before retiring after the 1986 season. His biggest success came driving the number 069 bomber for Hummer Howie. I never knew how he got his name Hummer, and I never asked. And the number 77 Epping Express of Lauren Valley, who's here today, and Dan Dexter, and also the 77 Supermodified for Tim Tefeathrin. But as I said, Howard Brown was tough. How tough was he? I remember a night very distinctly in 1964 at Arundel Speedway on the back straightaway during the last warm-up session in front of the pits. Howard Brown rolled. It looked as though a right front wheel or something got under the car, maybe something broke. And anyways, he flipped side over side, fenders flying, and the hood's flying, and nuts and bolts, and it was a terrible wreck. And when it was all over, I go down into the infield, and this wrecker guy's clearing him up, and they're carting Howard off to the hospital, unconscious, really worried about him. And I said to the guy, geez, that was awful, huh? He says, yeah, never seen nothing like it, eh? And I said, no. I said, geez, that's quite a wreck. No, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about the stock car. I never saw a stock car with 5 wheels. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, he says, look here, 2 of them fell off the front end, 2 are on the car, and 1's still inside the car. Well, as it was, they used to carry wheels inside the car. He was late getting to the track, and 1 of them was still inside the car when he was out doing his last warm-up. In 1966, he had a terrible crash at the Lee Tri-Oval track. First time I ever saw a compound fractured leg in my life. And I went over to him, and he's on the stretcher, and they're just loading him up in the stretcher. And I said, Brownie, you'll be all right. And he looks at me, and he's gritting his teeth, and he says, I can still kick your ass. Just like that. And I said, don't try using that leg right now. He come back afterwards. He kicked me with his cast. During that time, he liked to fish. And he's down in Epping, New Hampshire, And the world heavyweight champion, former ex-champion Jack Sharkey, lived in Epping. And they're both fishing for the same trout, and they're having a big fight back and forth with each other. Finally, Brown said to him, "You fish from over there and I'll fish from over here." That's the kind of guy he was. He was so competitive. Well, after some time, he got his chance. Bentley Warren put him in a super modified at Westboro Speedway. And Brown went out and he ran the thing. And by the way, for those who think you get your chance young, that you better make of it, the first time Howard Brown was ever in a super modified, he was 37 years old. Well, he went out and he ran that super modified, and he ran a lot of super modified races over the years, and the question became, it went from not how tough is he to how good is he? And he became very competitive, as I said. In 1969, Lauren Valley put him in the number 77, which later became the Epping Express. The very first night out in that car, he won his feature race. Later on in 1970, he opened up the season with a win, a 50-lap feature win at Stafford Motor Speedway. Later on, at the end of the year, he won the 100-lap World Series when we used to put the supers and the modifieds together. And in between in that season, he won on the 5/8 mile at Briar Motorsport Park. He went on to become the third leading all-time winner in NESMR history. He won, these are not made-up numbers or guesses or estimates. He won 93 feature events with us, third all-time in history, behind Ollie Silva and Ed West. He won approximately 130 feature events that we know of, and many more probably we don't know of. He won in 13 different speedways throughout New England, as well as Bathurst, New Brunswick. Howard Brown, his pinnacle came in 1977. He won the 150-lap NESMR Canadian American Classic Supermodified race at Star Speedway, where he had also won 3 track championships. Well, he won that race coming from 5th to 1st in the final 14 laps. And when it was all over, he had a hard time getting out. It took some time getting out of the car, and we're trying to move the show on, and finally he got out. Well, come to find out, he had one of those old Chevy steering boxes in the car. And if you ever tried to drive your automobile right now, just turn on the ignition without starting it up, and that's kind of what that was like. And he'd driven almost the final 75 laps without any power steering in that super modified. It was an amazing thing, and more amazing was 2 years earlier at Volusia Motor Speedway on the dirt in Florida in Red McDonald's car. He had finished 3rd in a dirt race, a dirt super modified event with sprint cars, had a very serious heart attack that cost him that season. He came back the very next year and won the feature race. His very first feature race out. I can tell you many more Howard Brown stories, some that are non-race related, some that are. However, he became a race driver after many people would have left the sport, and he became very good at it. He drove everything there ever was to drive with wheels on it, and drove it with a passion. Didn't always have the best equipment, but he was really good at what he did. Howie Brown passed away in 1987 after a fight with cancer. He was survived by his wife Maxine, 4 daughters, 3 sons, one of whom was predeceased by himself, Freddie, who was a driver that unfortunately lost his life at Lee USA Speedway. But through it all, he really cared about racing. And by the way, his family members are here at this table, I believe. You want to stand up just a second because you're going to bring a couple of you up here in just a moment. Howie Brown probably never thought he'd be in the Hall of Fame. Howie Brown, I don't really think ever knew how good he was as a race driver. He became very good at what he did. And Ken Smith and I were talking about it earlier. Howie Brown was never on the racetrack a single problem to anybody. He raced hard, but he wasn't a crasher, and he wasn't a banger, and he went out and he did a lot of good racing. And surely, his gritty legacy is more than deserving of this recognition. I would like to call up Heidi Brown and Billy Osborne, who now as a third generation Brown, this year won the All-Star Speedway Roadrunner Division Season Championship, to accept Howard Brown's induction into the Near Hall of Fame.
Hi, thank you, Russ, so much. I'm not a talker at all. I print more on racing paper and all that. I have a lot to say, but I can't say it in front of all you people, but thank you so much for this. I can't even talk, but thanks. And I know my father watches us every day because I've been pretty successful in my racing career and since my father died, and I've never gotten a scratch through it all, through enduro racing with all the guys. And now my son is involved in it, and I just read in this paper today, and I didn't realize it, in this little magazine here, that my son actually tied with 22 feature wins in one season, as my father did, and I didn't even know that. So this will be the next Brown to carry my father's name. So thank you guys very much.